Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Agrible, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, I wanted to start this video off today by showing you an animation from our new Ghost 16 satellite looking at the cloud field across the southern plains on Sunday. There are a few things that really kind of blew up that were of great interest to agriculture. First, we kind of looked down here in southeastern Texas. We had a nasty round of some pretty powerful thunderstorms that went through this area. I'll show you some hail pictures from this in just a few moments. We also saw 2 rounds of precipitation going through parts of Kansas and then another one through parts of the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. This is an area that has not seen rainfall in nearly 6 months, so this is quite important. Anyway, just despite this, this area has still been exceptionally dry, and we actually have had red flag warnings out for this same area for at least the past 4 or 5 days, and there were several fires that have broken out in the panhandle of Texas. But I just want to point out one last thing. Kind of deep in the upper level low here associated with this trough moving across Colorado, we did see some really heavy snowfall amounts in the mountains here, and some thunder snow was reported there as well. So just to kind of show you, the south central plains have been quite active, and this is our setup to start the week because this system is going to translate east, bringing severe weather threat to points east of here, and then quite a bit of precipitation over some areas that have been quite wet. So if we just kind of look at this on radar, I'm going to show you a couple of things. First, I'm going to point out that all-important precip that went through parts of Texas here, into Oklahoma, and then eventually into Kansas early. Then this is the second round later in the day coming through the panhandles, getting into, again, Texas and Oklahoma. If you watch this one more time, we'll see those nasty storms kind of blowing up right down in this area late in the day on Sunday. Here they come, right in through here. See them starting to pop right there. See that? And some of those storms produced some pretty massive hail. This was some hail reported in kind of southeastern Texas near Caldwell. Some of these stones getting, of course, to be about the size of baseballs. So, of course, if we're out there right now trying to get the planters rolling, you know, this is not the kind of weather you want to see. So what are we expecting in terms of this system? Well, here it is. This is the shortwave trough. There we can see the upper level of vorticity that's kicked off this low. That's going to be bringing some precipitation into southern Kansas overnight, night on Sunday into early Monday morning. So if you're watching this early Monday morning, we will be seeing some of this precip in this area. Well, as this low pressure system starts to move on off to the east, what our threat becomes is for some severe weather in through this area. So if you're in parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, parts of Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, and through this area, we're going to be on the lookout for some strong to severe storms. We've got a decent lifting mechanism coming through here, some really good wind shear, and certainly some upper level support to be kicking off some strong storms in this area. So Monday night, be watching out there. As the whole system tries to move toward the eastern seaboard, a couple things will be happening. In the north central plains, we could be seeing some snow way deep in the back side of this, kind of embedded in this overall trough as this little shortwave kind of works its way through Monday into Tuesday. So don't be surprised if we see some light snow accumulations here in the north central plains. But watch this, as that trough deepens, the models are kind of agreeing that by the time we get into early Wednesday morning, it kind of lingers here and potentially brings in the potential for some snow. Look at this, some snow in parts of Ohio, maybe into Virginia, West Virginia, maybe Kentucky, higher country here in this area. So this is bringing in some precip into a region that's been quite wet recently. Now after this goes through, so midweek, much of the Corn Belt, much of the central plains gets dry, but we have some strong onshore flow that's coming through starting Tuesday into Wednesday time period. It's going to be soaking the western part of the United States. And that will be the trough that we're going to have to watch, because before it moves all the way through, we will get a ridge building in the center part of the country, bringing more above average temperatures here to the south central plains. It does appear, though, that the Corn Belt stays cool for the probably first 4 days of this week, compared to average. But I want to watch this. By the time we get into early morning on Friday, we're going to have a front setting up into this area. And as we have some warm air pushing to overrun that cooler air, this is going to be our next kind of focal point for some adverse weather. So you can see here stretching from Tennessee all the way through Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, again back into the Dakotas, where that warm air is kind of advecting or overrunning that cooler air into this area. We're going to be producing what looks like to be a rather broad shield of precipitation with some snow in the northern plains. Now, this is forecast getting us all the way out to Friday, so there's some uncertainty with this, but we'll keep watching it. Beyond this, I just want to say this. The pattern stays active. We keep bringing in troughs into the west coast. They go racing across the center part of the country, bringing in more chances of precipitation. So speaking of precipitation, I'm going to run this out through the next 10 days. Now, this big blob you see right here coming over Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, that is a system that we're watching that's about 9 days out. So I'm going to lop that off so we're not, because I'm not quite convinced about that. And just look at the next 7 days in total here. What we see is as these systems go through the lower and mid-Mississippi River Valley and then eventually over to the Ohio River Valley, we're bringing precipitation to a region that's been very, very wet recently. So this is going to continue to be an issue as we push into the planting time period here in parts of Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, this area, and of course back into Illinois and Missouri. Now, again, this precipitation you see here, this is early Sunday morning. After that, this whole central plain stays relatively dry through much of the week. And I just want to show you this, some strong onshore flow. We are going to be expecting to see some major issues down here in Southern California with more mudslides and landslides with this next system as it approaches. Now, just to kind of remind you where we are right now, this is the last 30 days of precipitation expressed as a percent of normal. So it's been very wet from eastern Texas, and they just got hammered with more storms on Sunday, which are not represented in this map, but they'll show up in my next day's map. And it's been very wet basically from there through much of the eastern Corn Belt. And of course, very, very dry on the backside here. But what's important to see here is that we're looking at this pattern in week 2. So this is a new map I'm going to start showing you. It's going to kind of hone in on what we're looking at in terms of precipitation patterns for week 2 in our forecast. And it's going to be put together by the GFS Ensemble. So what we're picking up on is a wetter pattern here from what eastern Texas, getting right back into that same area that's been very, very wet recently. So the model is in agreement with itself and its 21-member ensemble here as keeping this region quite wet. And why this is important is just because this is the area that's getting planted right now, and the more precipitation we get, the more saturated those soils become, the more challenging it is to get into those fields. So we are seeing a wet bias in the week 2 forecast. Now, if we just talk about temperatures, this is what things have looked like through the first 17 days of March. So this gets us through the start of last weekend. We've seen basically a pattern that's set up where we've had a broader trough over the west, a ridge at times here of the central plains bringing in above average temperatures, and then a persistent trough feature and multiple low pressure systems moving up the east coast, keeping things cool there as well. So this has certainly been a much cooler spring than we saw last year. Now, in order to get that breakdown, we've got to see some pretty big shifts here. And the things that we want to see in order to get into a warm April, if you want to have a warm April, would be to see a pretty substantial ridge here that would form north of Hawaii, allowing us to dip into a trough here more consistently off the west coast, which allows more ridging here over the Corn Belt. Well, we just don't have that as we work our way through the end of the month. What we really see here is that, again, on Monday, there's our little shortwave trough causing some problems across the southeast with severe weather Monday, Tuesday. And then what happens is this broader trough occupies much of the Corn Belt through mid to end of week. And that's why we see the cooler pattern staying put here, at least through Thursday, Friday. There's that ridge moving into the middle part of the country, though, so this will keep the Four Corners area over towards Texas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska, Kansas warmer than average middle of the week, but we do see some strong onshore flow here causing some problems in California with a lot of precipitation. Now, you'll notice as this kind of gets going, I told you the pattern stays active. We, again, by the time we get into early next week, have this trough that kind of comes through California, tries to come sweeping across the U.S., keeping things very, very active in terms of the potential for severe weather. But this is out there pretty far, so I'm not ready just to call it just yet. But my point behind showing you this was we haven't done anything to adjust the overall pattern yet, which means we're probably going to stay locked into what we've seen so far in the month of March through the end of March. And so that's an important thing to kind of key in on there. Let's quickly take a look at what's been going on in South America. So this is an animation over the last 7 days showing you precipitation. Been very wet in parts of Brazil. And then watch this. We had this front come through right in through there, causing some pretty big issues. And then some major storms on the 16th and 17th in parts of Brazil. And then you just saw there right at the very end. I'll play it for you again real quick. What you see here at the very end of this animation is some heavier rainfall that moved through parts of Argentina into Uruguay into Rio Grande do Sul. And that's the precip we've been talking about now for about 10 to 15 days in these weather forecasts. By the way, in far eastern parts of Brazil, right over in this area, they had some pretty incredible flooding, and I saw many videos on Twitter kind of showing us how bad the flood was in this area. Now granted, we're not in the major corn and soybean producing area over here, but this is showing you how strong the monsoonal flow still is at this time of year. Well, if we look forward here, this is what I want you to pick up on. We do have some wetter than average conditions projected for Brazil, so this will be an issue with them, again, continuing to harvest the first crop of beans and getting the second crop of corn and cotton in. But we do return back to that pattern here where it's dry through much of Argentina. At least the forecast bias in the long term is for drier conditions, while wet in parts of Uruguay and in parts of Rio Grande do Sul. This is an area that could definitely be using this precipitation, just needs it to come in steadily, not in these huge one-off events. But we are certainly seeing a wetter pattern for southern Brazil as they move toward harvest down there. So again, dry for Argentina, wet for southern Brazil, wet for parts of Uruguay, which have had multiple big rainfall events over the last 7 days or so. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast coming out on Thursday. Head to agrible.com to learn how you can get real-time agronomic and sustainability insights all at the touch of a button. Talk to you again midweek.